Oh, hi there. I guess I'm not surprised. I had someone critiquing my new background on my videos. They said, "Why do you have a symbol of hate for your background?" And um, I had made some comparisons saying like, "Look, you're disconnected from facts. This is an inanimate object, and it was made recently." Whereas the symbol that I guess, well, it does represent the organization has been defunct for over 70 years. So, I mean, you can't, you know, dig up things in the past and ignore what's going on in the world today and expect to be treated with any respect. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, a lot of bad things happened in World War II. A lot of bad things happened because of the National Socialist Party and Adolf Hitler in particular. Obviously, a lot of bad things happened. I'm not denying that. But there are things that happen today that don't get that kind of attention. They don't get that immediate reaction. It's almost like a bull seeing a red flag and immediately reacting to that. That's actually a fictitious. Bulls don't react particularly to red. It's just the more how the Montadors, wave the flag that they entice the bull to attack them. As a side note. But anyway, there are some views that I do have. I'm slightly anti-Zionism. Not totally for say, in the sense that um, the state of Israel, I don't think it should be where it is. I mean, Zionism, it was around for a long time. They wanted to go back to the exact area of Israel for a very long time. And the British were there. There was already turmoil in the whole area anyway, with the Arab Revolt of 36 through 39. That's all on Wikipedia. It's actually not a subject of particular interest of mine. That whole area is just a powder keg. And, like, just to sell, like, a hundreds of year old score, um, the Jewish people who wanted to go exactly back to Israel, or some of them did, to form the state that's there today, and has caused so many problems. There are a lot of other places in the world where they could have gone to, and it would not have caused the amount of trouble that it has. Um, Lots of places in Africa they could have gone to, conquer the area. Nobody would have bat an eye about it. Uh, would it have been a relatively wrong thing to do? Yes, but forming the state of Israel there and having all the problems associated with it was worse by comparison. Like there are places in Africa, um, you know, I guess well back after World War II because Israel was formed in 1948. Um, that were prosperous areas. There was nothing wrong with their agricultural. They had access to the sea. Um, they did have tribal peoples there and things like that. Obviously, they didn't have garbage. I mean, plastic wasn't particularly prevalent until a few decades later. Um, there's many places they could have gone to in Africa that would have been better, but it was just this mentality of settling an old score and reclaiming land that they believed that was entitled to them, even though a lot of Arab nations and peoples were there for much, much longer. Um, it's it's a really complicated subject, and obviously I don't know that much about it. And like I said, it's not an interesting thing to me. There's just so many things about it that just sound completely ass backwards and completely stupid. Uh, like if it was the British that were there, and I could see them wanting easier access through the Mediterranean. I mean, from a military perspective, it makes sense to, have colonies in North Africa as well as Europe, um, because, throughout history there have been, things like the Moorish invasion, um, which was mostly black Arabs and things like that. That was always a concern. But, around about World War II, post World War II times, I mean, there was Franco-Spanish uh, fascist country. Italy obviously sided with the Axis powers in World War II. I mean, there was France. Actually, the British and the French had some skirmishes in the Mediterranean during World War II. So that would have created a little bit of resentment that, would have dissipated over time, but that didn't quite just go away. Uh, I mean, I guess it mostly has now, but there was the Turks, Turkey. A lot of people didn't like them, in particular the Greeks. Uh, it was a big, you know, it's an area of a lot of strife and problems, and adding a new one there that wasn't going to be there for peaceful means was just bad idea right off the bat. And like I said, it was to settle an old score, and it's just like let it go because the people who took charge of this, they themselves probably for the most part weren't very much affected by um, I forget what they called it. Basically, that area when they were kicking Jewish people out of that area, and there are a few terms that Jewish people like to coin as their own, and anti-Semitism is one of them. And that actually is a very misused word because Jewish people actually are not white. That's not speaking from any Nazi point of view or anything. They're actually legitimately not white. They're Semites. They're closely related to Arabs. Like even in Family Guy, they even cracked a joke where Peter Griffin's like, "Oh, you put a Jewish guy and an Arab guy next to each other, I can't tell the difference." And he's actually quite right about that in a lot of instances. Um, they don't like to admit that though, but that's true. So I mean, anti-Semitism is a word that's not used correctly, and like also, um, if anyone, it's the Israelis that are the biggest anti-Semites because like over there they treat the Palestinians like dirt. They really do. Like they're beneath them. A lot of them do work in Israel, but they're treated like second class for sure. And I mean, I have no sympathy for organizations like Hamas or anything like that, but you know, it's still just a big mess that could have been avoided if they had just gone, well, look, we'll go to another part of Africa. I bet they could have even found one that had access to the sea, good agricultural, maybe even mineral deposits or something, um, that was relatively uninhabited. And they could have gone there and it wouldn't have been a problem. But no, they had to go to where Israel is, knowing it's going to piss everybody off in the neighborhood. Yeah, I want to move somewhere, but I want to move somewhere where I'm going to piss everyone off. Uh, I mean, they've been working on it for a long time to reestablish that, and World War II was the nail in the coffin that got that all set up. They needed it. They felt the urgency to have it done, and you know, it's just like there's a lot of information about this sort of stuff. It's all there on Wikipedia. Um, and if people are interested in learning the specifics of certain things, that's a worthwhile subject to look into. I am not because it looks like an unpleasant headache to read, and I mean I know things about reading unpleasant subjects that cause headaches, uh, and that is one I don't particularly want to add to the list. At least not at this point in my life anyway. Um, so when I said I was, partially anti-Zionist, I was more implying that, sure, a country called Israel should exist. Did it have to exist, in the Middle East, Africa, Northern African region? No. Too many problems there, and it was actually not that great an area anyway. Um, sure, they're able to grow a little bit of food there and things like that, and they have access to the Mediterranean, but there's there's a lot of things there that make it not worthwhile. And I don't know, I guess in hindsight, there might be even Israelis at this point in time where they look at it and go, oh, yeah, maybe it would have been better if ancestors isn't the right word because, they're not that far behind, but um, they're the descendants of the people who constructed the state of Israel, and they may go, well, they could have done things better. They could have gone someplace else. And maybe even created like a country that was bigger in a better area with less turmoil. It's just a thought. I mean, even if they had to fight tribal wars with African nations at the time, uh, it's still, it's the sprig of evil in the world. It would have been swept under the rug and it wouldn't be a problem. It'd be less of a problem than what they've got right now. And, I'm sure some expert can come flying out of the woodwork and, go, well, blah, 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 this, blah, 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 that. And, just like, that's very nice that you know all that, but I don't care. Okay? World War III could happen because of this bullshit with Israel and the fact that everyone around them hates them. And Israel is too much of a problem for the West. They're more of an impediment than an ally. And yeah, like they're far too important a country in the sense of world stability than they should be because they have an aggressive attitude when it comes to warfare, as most certainly the case. And I don't know if they inherited some ideas from Nazi Germany or not. Some people would imply that they have, that the state of Israel grew from the ruins of Nazi Germany. Um, except, that's open to interpretation. I'm not really wanting to get into that at this point in time, but this main video, the main theme I wanted to say was, yes, I think Israel should exist. Should it exist where it is right now? Absolutely not. Can they just pull out or, pack their bags and leave and go someplace else now? That'd be a bit tricky to do. Not impossible, but it would be more difficult to come up with a face-saving explanation at this point. Uh, it, I think they're pretty much stuck where they are, and even for themselves, like how would they feel comfortable knowing that basically they gotta have somebody with their finger right above a nuclear weapon switch 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, forever, because their conventional army actually probably wouldn't win against any interested Arab countries in the region. I mean, Binkov's Battlegrounds has just said that the Egyptians would beat the Israelis just because they're a much bigger country, their economy's improved and things like that. I mean, there are other things about warfare as well. I mean, the Americans, they've got their hands in Egypt as well to an extent, and Egypt wouldn't go to war again with Israel, even though they hate them, despite what they say or don't say. But there's just mechanisms that inhibit things from happening, and that would be one of them. But if those mechanisms were not there, if nuclear weapons were not on the table, Israel would be gone. And in that sense, it's almost like for the West, I guess, as a benefit, is almost like having, a suicide bomber country in that whole region. I mean, shit hits the fan, it's them that are gonna go up in smoke. Uh, and then that would be 9/11 times a billion gajillion, or whatever quote that was from Team America, where they're going on about that, the escalation of 9/11s, and you know, because I mean the Brits and the Arabs have not liked each other for a very long time, uh, hundreds of years, if well longer than that, of course, but. Um, yeah, it's just a giant mess. It really is. Uh, it would be a great thing if they actually came up with, some sort of radar mind control device that immediately programmed even a full-grown, well-established personality adult's brain into thinking what they should think. I mean, as science fiction and as scary as that sounds, um, it might result in peace in an area where there will never be uh, under the current circumstances. Um, and guess what? There are mad scientists out there thinking of such things, trying to do things, and building things. Um, whereas people who mention it on YouTube sound like conspiracy theorists. Um, that all aside, um, yeah, that was what my video was going to be about. As far as somebody's interpretation as this as being a hate symbol, you're allowed to have your opinion on it, and I'm allowed to have my opinion on it. If you come around telling me you can't have that opinion, that's called you being an authoritarian, and in a sense, you being the fascist. Coming along telling me I can't have a piece of fabric behind me while I'm talking about stuff on the internet, in my own home. Uh, it wouldn't otherwise affect you. You didn't even have to click that button to watch this video. Um, so, I made plenty of points, and I can make plenty more, but need a bit of feedback. Anyway, I guess I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one, and try not to be offended or too offended. Try to have an open mind. And most of all, do not be a cunt about a $15 100% polyester flag. Whatever. Anyway, talk to you guys later.